All right, I'm going to show you how to get started painting your different shapes after you label your shapes. And I'm going to start with my light source down here. So I am going to just draw some lines so I remember. And don't forget to label your shapes, as I said before. And so I'm going to think about the bottom here. And if the light's coming from this side, this would be the lightest, so that's going to be the tints. All the sides facing the left. Since I can't see the bottom, that would be the lightest, but since I can't see that, then I'm going to have my lightest areas be this side. And then you might have to just make some artistic decisions yourself. I'm going to make this front part the medium or the pure color, and then the top of my shape will be the shade. Now with the tints, I'll want to make sure to erase first, and even the medium, the M, erase that before you start painting. But I'm going to mix my colors right now. And with my palette, you can see I have a little bit of white in the palette, a tiny bit of black because black goes a long way. And then I have kind of a maroon color that I'm going to start with. You'll be using the acrylic paint as you painted the background. And it is also helpful to have a palette knife to mix colors and scoop them out because I don't want to mess up my white or my black. I don't want to taint it with other colors. And so I'm going to use my palette knife to mix the colors. So my pure color is right there already, so I don't need to do anything with that. But with mixing my tint, I'm going to take a little bit of the white and put it in a separate well. You'll have to decide how much you want to mix, but you'll need a lot more white if you have a darker color. And then with the palette knife, it's really handy because instead of rinsing it out like you have to do with a brush, you can just take a paper towel. I don't have any, so I'm going to use a rag. And you can wipe off the paint. And then you won't have to worry about mixing it with other colors. So I'm going to take a little bit of my maroon and mix it in with the palette knife. So that's a pretty good tint. As long as it looks different from the medium color, which it definitely does, then you're good to go. Gonna wipe off my palette knife again. And then I'll mix my shade. So with the shade, what I'm going to do is start with just a tiny bit of black because black goes a long way. Clean off, oops, as I'm breaking my material. Clean off my palette knife and then scoop more of the red. Since the red is this reddish color is pretty dark, I don't want to have too much black at all. Look at how dark that got already. I'm going to get more of my red. And if you have too much black, maybe just don't mix everything in your well. Just grab a little corner area and mix that in. I'll just stick with that. So I have my pure color, my tint, and my shade. You can use your best judgment to change the colors if you need to and adjust. And then I am ready to start painting. Okay. So for painting, like I said, make sure you erase your writing first, especially with the tint, and that you get your pencil eraser snibbles out of there. And I'm going to take a really tiny brush and just carefully paint around the edges first of my tint. You can see I'm continuing to dip my brush in the paint, so I have a nice amount of paint on my brush, and I didn't paint my background first because I didn't have a chance to, but you should have painted your background first. And the nice thing is, if you make a mistake with this part, you can always go back and touch it up. But I'm going to try to be as clean as possible, dipping my brush in, getting nice smooth edges. I'm going to round the edges first, and then I fill the inside. So there's my tint. I like that color. I don't think it's too bright or too light. And then what you'll need is your water cup to rinse your brush out, and swish your brush really well in the bottom. And then you can blot it dry with your paper towel. And then I'm going to paint my medium color next. And since my color is pretty dark, I probably don't need to erase it, but it's good to get in that habit. And then brush out your eraser schnibbles. And do the same thing. I'm going to go back with a little bit of a softer bristled brush. The tiny brush that I'm using has very stiff bristles, so I can't smooth things out quite as well. And I want a nice smooth surface before I move on to my shade. Next is my shade, and I'm going to just do the same thing. Looks a little bit too similar to my medium color, so I'm actually going to mix the black in a little bit more, and I will need a way tinier brush for this part. Be really careful. All right, what I did was I went back in, touched up a few areas. I would take my black color and touch this up a little bit, and just make sure when you squint your eyes and you're looking at your shape that you see a difference between all the colors. And in looking at this, if you have a really dark, pure color, you could actually lighten it up right away, or use the pure color as your shade if you want to, because this maroon color is so dark. I could have actually used that as my shade, as my darkest color, and then I could have added just more white for the medium and then a lot of white for the tint. So it's up to you. You can decide how you want to make those decisions, but just make sure each side of the shape looks different and that you're considering where your light source is coming from as you're painting. Have fun!